You are not a fraud. You belong in that room. You deserve to take up space. You deserve a seat at the table. It's not an accident. It's not by luck. You deserve to be in that position. These are conversations that I regularly have to have with myself. I have to literally talk myself off of the ledge at every opportunity that comes my way. And that is because I suffer strongly from this thing called imposter syndrome. I didn't know that this is what I was struggling with for many years until I heard about it from a friend and I started doing my own research. And I was like, oh my gosh, this literally sounds like me. I have this thing big time, imposter syndrome. I always feel like a fraud, even though I know I'm not, even though I know I'm good at what I do, even though I know that I've done the work, I've done the learning, I've had all the experiences working with clients. I've done so much over the years across my career, both in the finance space and also in my marketing career to date. And yet, every time I enter into a room or a business or corporate type setting, I always feel like a fraud. I always feel like I don't belong. And this episode is dedicated to anybody just like myself who struggles with imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud, feeling like you don't belong. This episode is to encourage you that you are not a fraud. You do belong. You deserve that seat at the table and you deserve to take up space, and you should do it unapologetically. Okay, so let's start off with a little bit of an introduction. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Tolu and I'm a former financial coach turned podcaster turned finance content creator. And I'm just really passionate about helping people when it comes to their money, get confident with their money and know that you can have your money working for you. I think for a long time, personal finance has been that taboo subject that we don't like to talk about. We bury our heads in the sand, and yet we all are trying to figure things out. Not all of us have the answers. Not all of us know what to do when it comes to managing our finances, because not all of us came from the most financially savvy background. So we're kind of learning on the job. We enter into adulthood and we kind of have to figure it out. So the purpose of this whole platform is to share the money lessons that I've learned over the years, and to also bring on other finance experts so they can share their expertise and also speak to other people that are making it in their own arena and their own sphere, people that haven't been given a platform, but their stories deserve that platform and deserve to be heard. So all of that is to come on Not Another Money podcast, but today's episode is specifically dedicated to the subject of being an imposter or suffering from this thing that we call imposter syndrome, because it has a big impact when it comes to your personal finances. You'll think, what is the correlation between talking about money on the podcast and imposter syndrome? But best believe me, by the end of the episode, you are going to understand how the two relate, and how, if it's something that you suffer from, you're going to really understand how this is impacting your bag and it's impacting your bank balance. Okay, so first things first, to ensure that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet and you know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this topic called imposter syndrome, I'm going to give a quick explanation as to what imposter syndrome is. So essentially, it's that feeling like a fraud. It's that persistent feeling of self-doubt, inadequacy, feeling like you're not quite good enough or you're not quite able to do the things that you set out to do, even though you've already been able to achieve success in that arena. When you have imposter syndrome, you feel like at one point, somebody's going to realize that I'm not supposed to be here. Somebody's going to realize that I'm faking it. Someone's going to realize that I'm a fraud and I don't belong in this space, and they're going to find me out and they're going to expose me. And that's the kind of thing that people that have imposter syndrome often tend to believe. Imposter syndrome is something you can suffer from regardless of what your background is, regardless of your age, regardless of your accolades, regardless of your prominence in society, whatever position you are in, whatever accomplishments you've made. Like, none of that matters when you have this thing called imposter syndrome. You can have a PhD in the subject, yet you still feel like an imposter. And this is something we need to shake, because like I said, it affects your bag, it affects your earning potential, and it affects you really becoming the best version of yourself and showing up as the best version of yourself. A story from the Bible that comes to mind when talking about the imposter syndrome and how it affects your finances is that whole notion of burying your talent. There's a parable in the story about the parable of the talents. I think it's somewhere in the book of Matthew, where it talks about a master and he's going on this journey and he has these 3 servants. And so he entrusts these 3 servants with 3 different talents. He basically gives these servants different amounts of money for them to go and invest. So one he gives like 5 talents to, the other one he gives 2 talents to, and the last one he gave 1 talent to. The talents that each servant received either way was a lot of money if we were to convert it today. So what the first 2 servants do is they take the talents that they were given and they invest that talent, and the talent is able to multiply. But a third of the servants didn't do anything with that talent, didn't invest it, didn't grow it, just buried that talent and was waiting for the master to come back. So when the master returns and asks the servants, what have you all done with the talents that I gave you? The first 2 are able to produce the talent plus all the money that they had multiplied it by, whereas the third talent, who took that talent and buried it, came back with that same talent that he had buried. So the first 2 talents, he said, well done, my good and faithful servants, to them, because they had done the job and they had taken those talents and multiplied it. But he was so disappointed with the third servant because actually he had taken that talent and buried it. And all he did was just return the same talent that he'd been given. He didn't use it in any way. So the master goes on to tell off that third servant for being lazy and wicked and wasting the talent that he had given him. And then he ended up taking that talent from the servant and giving it to one of the other 2. And I think the moral of the story here is that we all have different gifts and talents, but we need to use it responsibly. Like, we need to take that talent and run with it and grow it and develop it, and don't take it and bury it. And I think when you have this thing called imposter syndrome that we're talking about here, you have the tendency to want to bury that talent. You don't want to step out and do things out of your comfort zone. You don't want to push yourself. You don't want to stretch yourself for fear of being found out to be a fraud, or for fear of what other people are going to say, or for fear of judgment. And we allow other people and outside noise and outside voices to cripple us into inaction. And I think to whom much is given, much is required. And I think each one of us has gifts. Like, we may have different levels of gifts, just like the story illustrates. So some of us may be more gifted in one area than the other, but the reality is we all have a level of gifting, and we all have a level of ability, and we all have something, one kind of talent in us that we can bring forward and do something with. But we allow external parties, outside noise, opinion and judgment of others, negative self-talk to cripple us and stop us from achieving the success that we can actually achieve. A lot of times when it comes to imposter syndrome, it's not who you are that's holding you back, it's who you think you're not. For myself, for many, many years, it was who I didn't believe I was that held me back from seeking opportunities, from pushing myself outside my comfort zone, for allowing myself to grow and expand, speaking to people, networking, pursuing opportunities. All of these things are things that I struggled to put myself out there to do because of this whole imposter syndrome. The reality is, you're not a fraud. You deserve to take up space. You have a purpose. You have greatness in you. I believe that there's greatness in every single one of us. And I think we stop ourselves from achieving that greatness because of this negative self-talk and because of a negative self-image. But I think when you start to see yourself the way God sees you, you start to realize the potential that you really have. I'm a Christian, in case you didn't know. I'm a Christian and I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. So as a child of God, and I believe that I'm made in the image of God, how dare I not believe in the talents that He's given me? How dare I not believe that as somebody made in God's image, I can achieve great things? Like, it doesn't make sense for me to believe that I'm made in the image of the Creator, yet I cannot create. It just doesn't add up. So for me, I need to believe what I read in the Word. So if I'm reading the Word of God and it's telling me I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, then I need to believe that I can do these things and not just read it and take it at face value, but not actually step outside my comfort zone and believe these things, these great things that the Bible says I can achieve. So I think, it's just so important to not allow those negative self-talk, that feeling of imposter, to cripple you into not doing what you want to do, or do the things that God has laid on your heart for you to do. Because I know so many of you, even listening to this right now, there's things in your heart, there's things that you've wanted to do, that you've wanted to pursue, that keep you up at night, that wake you up in the middle of the night, and you think, no, I need to do this. But because of this imposter syndrome, because of this negative self-talk, because of this lack of self-belief, you're not doing it. You're just sitting down there, and somebody else with less qualification, less ability than you has run with that idea and they're succeeding. Yet because you have this imposter syndrome, you're sitting back and you're not taking action. You're making every excuse under the sun to not start that thing that you want to start. You don't have the money, you don't have the voice, you don't have the ability, you don't look good enough, you're not smart enough. Like, you can come up with a million reasons not to do things and no reasons for you to take action. But the catastrophe would be if you don't do it. Like, yes, people may talk, but the reality is people are not going to talk. Like, nobody cares about you or is interested in you the way that you're interested in yourself. I think sometimes we think people care about us more than they actually do, and we think people are interested in our lives more than they actually are. When you realize that in the same way you're just thinking about yourself and the things that concern you, that is how other people are thinking too. So while you're there stalling about posting that post on Instagram or promoting your product or service, thinking, people are going to judge you or people are going to laugh at the fact that you get no interaction and engagement, are you doing that to anybody else? Probably not, because you're busy trying to do your post, right? You're busy trying to do your thing. And the people that are going forward, that are doing things, that are building things, they are not watching what other people are doing around them. They are not the ones that are going to be criticizing or tearing you down. The people that are the most negative and have the most to say are the ones doing nothing. It's just like that saying, empty barrels make the most noise. It's the people that their opinions matter the least that have the most to say. So don't worry about them. Focus on building whatever it is in your heart that you want to build. Step out. If you fail, so what? Fail forward, fail fast. And every failure, like I said before, it's a lesson. So you take that L as a lesson. Don't take it as a loss and think, oh my gosh, I messed up. My idea flopped. Take it as a lesson so that next time you start something, you know what not to do. So then you can get there a lot faster. I was recently featured on an episode of the Magnify Collective podcast. And I remember when I was invited onto that podcast episode, I was thinking, are you all right? Like, why are you contacting me to come on there? What could I possibly have to say of any value to your audience? I've watched that podcast. One of my friends was featured on it a while ago. And even when she was featured on it, I was like, wow, how did you get on that platform? That's incredible. That's amazing. She was just telling me about how amazing the experience was. And she's just a boss and she's killing it in her field and everything she does. So for me, it made sense that they would invite her on that platform because she's absolutely amazing. And the business that she has built is amazing. So for that same platform to then come and contact me to come on there, I was so confused. I was like, why are they reaching out to me? What do I have to say? You see this imposter thing that I was talking about? This is an example of it creeping in. It crept in big time, to the point that I was going to decline the invite because I was thinking, no, I don't have anything of value to add to any conversation on such a platform. And then I had to talk myself off that ledge again. And I had to remind myself of the things that I have been able to achieve and the value that I can bring to that platform. And just think about the fact that there's a reason why they've invited me onto the platform. I didn't go out there to seek the opportunity. That opportunity came my way. And they've obviously looked at my work, they've looked at my platform, and they thought that I would be a good guest to come on and talk about that topic. So how dare I then turn around and be like, nope, I'm going to take that talent and bury it? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just go with it and believe that, okay, if God has given me this opportunity, he's surely going to equip me to do a good job. And fast forward, that episode came out a couple of weeks ago and it has had a lot of great feedback. I've had loads of great messages come through my DMs on Instagram off the back of people that have watched the episode. People asking me questions about the conversation that we had. And it's just been great. Like the feedback all around, even when I posted it on Instagram, all my audience, the engagement was just amazing. I haven't seen that much activity on my Instagram account in ages. So it was just nice to be like, oh wow, people still follow this page, because Instagram be holding your audience hostage. So people are not seeing your content in the way they should. So that particular post or those posts around that podcast episode got a lot of engagement, which was great. It just reminded me of the fact that I'm capable of a lot more than I think, and that I shouldn't feel like a fraud or feel like I don't belong or feel like I don't deserve a seat at the table. I have to remind myself constantly that actually, no, Tolu, you've done a great job to get to where you are so far. And yes, you're not where you want to be, but look how far you've come. And it just goes to show the amount of potential that you still have and the amount there is still for you to achieve and obtain. And I think my message to you would be to look at things in the same way, in terms of not feeling like an imposter, appreciating the success that you've achieved so far, appreciating where you are on your journey, appreciate that we are all a work in progress. Nobody has arrived. And that's something that I'm learning now as well. When you start speaking to people who are in positions that you want to be in, or are even further ahead than the position that you're trying to get to, and you have those conversations and you realize the struggles that they deal with are struggles that you yourself are still dealing with, you start to realize, oh wow, we're all just humans trying to figure this thing out. Nobody has made it. Nobody has arrived. Even if their bank balance has arrived, in terms of as individuals developing personally, our mindset, the way we view ourselves, the way we view the world around us, all of that is still developing. We are all still learning. Nobody is the finished article. It's so funny when I get messages or DMs about how confident I am. Like, you wouldn't believe the amount of people that say this to me. And I'm like, listen, if you knew what went through my head every time I pick up my phone to record myself speaking, you'd understand that, no, I don't have it all figured out. It's just the difference is I just do it regardless of how I'm feeling. So even if inside I feel like I want to die, I just have to keep showing up and putting the content out, because I just believe that there is somewhere that I'm going and this is a path in which to get there. And I can't allow fear of failure, imposter syndrome, or anything of that nature to stop me from pursuing these goals. And I just keep showing up irrespective of how I'm feeling. And I hope that encourages you on your journey too. No matter what it is you're building, no matter how small it seems or insignificant or how little it seems right now, we have to start somewhere to be great. Like, what's the saying? I think it's, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. So you don't have to be great to start. You don't have to be the finished article to start. You just need to start and then just keep going from there. The more you apply yourself, the more you build up evidence, for the things you can achieve, the more you'll see yourself grow and you'll see yourself develop, your self-confidence develops. And over time, all of that negative self-talk and self-doubt, it starts to go. Like, I can't lie to you, it's not gone completely. Like, I just gave you the example of me almost not doing that Magnify podcast. However, I just have to keep doing it irrespective of how I'm feeling. And the more I do it, the more it's like, oh, actually, look, I did it. It was fine. I didn't die. I didn't do a bad job. If I did it then, that means I can do it again another time. And the more you do it, the more you build up evidence of yourself being able to do these things, the more confident you become. And the more you just encourage yourself as well. You have to be your biggest cheerleader. Like, you have to encourage yourself. Don't wait for a round of applause to come externally. You need to give yourself that round of applause in the same way you would do for a friend or family member or loved one. I'm sure you're probably the first person to big up your friends when they do great things. You're the first person to cheer for your family member when they achieve something great. Well, you need to take that same love and that same care and affection and show it to yourself. You need to big yourself up when you do something good as well. Tell yourself how amazing you are. Tell yourself how great you are. Give yourself that pat on the back. Don't wait for that validation to come externally. You need to validate yourself. And the more you do that validating yourself, the more you're going to see yourself growing, the more opportunities you're going to be able to take on. You're going to see doors open for you that you never anticipated or never imagined, just because you stepped out and you started believing yourself and backing yourself. Like, it's so funny. Me and my friends talk about it all the time. You got people that got married yesterday and tomorrow they're the marriage expert. Why? Because they said they're the marriage expert, and because they've said they're the marriage expert, people believe them and people are going to them for marital advice. Doesn't matter that they've been married for 2 weeks. They're still going to listen to them because that's how they position themselves. And people like confident people. People like people that believe in themselves. People back people that believe in themselves. So I think the more self-belief you have, the less you allow imposter syndrome to rule you, the more you're going to see opportunities come your way and you're going to see doors open for you that you never anticipated, that you never imagined. When I look at my journey so far, a lot of the doors that have opened for me are the ones that have opened when I just stepped out of my comfort zone and I silenced that negative voice that told me I couldn't do it. So yes, let that be a message to you. Don't bury your talent. Don't allow imposter syndrome to stop you from pursuing opportunities that are there for the taking. People are doing the thing that you desire to do because they believe that they can do it. And if you just start applying that in your own life, start having that encouraging self-talk, start believing in yourself, get around like-minded people as well, that will really help when it comes to overcoming that imposter syndrome. The last thing you want is, for example, you've got a business idea that you want to start and you tell it to your friend that has no business or your friend that isn't entrepreneurial in any way. Depending on the kind of friend that person is, they will shut it down, not because they're being a bad friend to you, but because they don't know it, because it's not something they've done themselves or it's not somewhere they've been. And also the fact that they love you and they want the best for you and they're scared. So because of that, they kind of project that onto you. And if you are not strong enough in your conviction or not strong enough in that belief or that business idea that you have to start, you might take that and not do it. So that might put you off and then you don't start that business. You really want to get around somebody that is where you're trying to get to, or somebody else that's already started a business that can give you advice, that can give you direction, that can encourage you and motivate you to pursue that business idea. Another quote that I love is, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you are right. And that is so true when it comes to pursuing any kind of goal that you have, when it comes to a business goal, financial goal, wherever it is that you're trying to pursue, savings goal, paying off debt. It can apply across the board financially. No matter what it is that you're trying to do, if you believe you can do it, you will do it. And if you don't believe you can do it, you won't do it. And it's just that simple, to be honest. It sounds like airy fairy when people say it, but it's just how things go. So let's say, for example, you want to start a business selling smoothies. You have the idea, you have the recipe, and you want to start. But then you realize, oh, actually, I don't have a blender. Actually, I don't know if I have the food safety award for me to be able to make these for my house. Oh no, there's so many things that are going against it. So that means I can't do it. So straight away, that business is going nowhere. You're never going to start it because you've already come up with so many reasons as to why you can't start that business idea. But somebody else can have that same business idea and see all of those obstacles as opportunities. Okay, I don't have a food license for me to make food for my house. So how do I get one? Okay, I need to go online. I need to research my local council, find out who I need to speak to in order to get this license. And they start coming up with an action plan as to how they're going to make that business start. So can you see two different scenarios, the same business idea, two different people with two different mentalities, concerning how to start that business. One is not going to do it because they've allowed all the obstacles to cripple them to inaction, whereas the other person has seen all those obstacles as an opportunity, and they're going to go after it and they're going to make it happen. And then there's going to be people that are going to be spectators watching all of this unfold, and they're going to look at that second person and think, oh no, that person's just lucky, or that person is an anomaly. But the reality is that person just has a different mindset to a lot of us, in terms of they just have that self-belief that I'm going to make this happen no matter what, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make my vision become a reality. And I think when you start adopting that kind of mindset, and you don't look left, you don't look right, you don't look at what people are doing, and you don't allow negative self-talk to take over, you're able to step out and build great things. In terms of the signs of imposter syndrome, so you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, okay, I can relate to some of this. There's other signs of imposter syndrome that I haven't mentioned that may not be specific to me, but may be specific to you. So if you do see these signs in your everyday life, then you know, okay, I do suffer from imposter syndrome. What am I going to do about it? Then you can start taking some of the action steps that we're going to discuss in order to overcome imposter syndrome. I mean, we've already touched on some of the things you can do to overcome imposter syndrome, but there's still so many more. People that suffer from imposter syndrome often attribute their success to an external factor. So it's, I just got lucky, for example. Oh, it was just because I had a great team working with me. Oh, it's just because I was born in the year I was born. There's always something else beyond you that is the reason for your success. Oh, it's because I've got money, or it's because I look this way, that's why the opportunities come my way. You don't want to just accept that. No, it's because you were good and you did a great job and you are the best candidate for that job. Don't doubt your skills, don't doubt your abilities. You are great and you deserve to be recognized for that greatness. People that suffer from imposter syndrome often look externally for validation. You're always looking left, right for somebody to validate you, for somebody to give you praise, for somebody to reaffirm you and give you the assurance that you're great and you're good at your job. Another big symptom of people that have imposter syndrome is always wanting everything perfect. Like you take perfectionism to another level, and everything just has to be just right all the time. You set yourself some ridiculously high standards and you measure yourself against some unrealistic high standards. You hold yourself to high standards that you wouldn't hold anybody else to. And that's because you never feel perfect and never quite feel good enough. People that suffer from imposter syndrome are often workaholics. So you work harder than everybody else. You're always the first to get to the office, always the last to leave, always going above and beyond. But not because, I just want to do a good job, because you feel like if I don't do this, I'm not going to be seen as good enough, or people are going to think I'm a fraud. People are going to find out that I don't belong, that I'm just fake, that I'm just here, but I'm just here by chance. Another thing that people with imposter syndrome do is that they focus on their past mistakes. They're not able to let the past go. They dwell on it and they constantly ponder on it and are always thinking about what happened in a previous scenario and what they should have done differently, what they should have said differently, what everybody was thinking about them. And it's almost kind of a paranoid way of being, that you just feel like everyone's talking about you and you feel like people think you're a fraud and people think you don't belong in that space. And it's just constant barrage of negative self-talk. And we touched on it earlier in terms of the financial implications of having imposter syndrome, and I think this is why we really needed to tackle it on today's episode. And I can do follow-up episodes as well talking about imposter syndrome, because I really do think it hinders a lot of us when it comes to our finances, but also our career progression. Some of the financial impacts of imposter syndrome, I think one of them is limited career advancement. And this can be because, for example, you are just trying to please everybody. So because of that, you're taking on extra workload unrelated to your workload, and that's impacting your ability to do your own job, because you're just saying yes to everybody else, trying to please everybody else so that they don't think you're a fraud and you shouldn't be there. So you're trying to justify your place by overcompensating and overextending yourself to your own detriment. And you also don't apply for promotion, so you don't push yourself to step out and apply for more senior roles, higher paying roles, because you feel like you're not good enough and you can't get the job. I think this is something that females struggle with more than males, particularly because in the workplace you always see in the senior leadership teams there's a lot more men often than there is women, and that's because men, once they can do like 10% of the job, they're going to apply for it. Whereas with a lot of women, it's like, until I can do 98.9% of the things on that job role, how dare I apply? There's no way I can apply for it because I can't get it, because I don't know every single thing on that job description. Having imposter syndrome is really going to limit your career progression, because you're constantly feeling like a fraud, feeling like you don't belong, and not challenging yourself to apply for more senior roles that pay a lot more money. This can also lead to a lot of burnout as well, because when you have that imposter syndrome, like I said, you're just trying to do everything for everybody to your own detriment. Another thing that impacts your finances is underpricing yourself. So if you're a freelancer or you're a sole trader or you're a business owner, A lot of times when you have imposter syndrome, you feel bad for charging your worth. This is something I struggled with big time when I was doing my coaching, and also when I had my first business, Something Sweeter, which I haven't talked about yet on the podcast, but it's definitely coming. I'm still getting over it. I think once I feel a bit more comfortable, I will share that whole story about my first business and how it kind of went pear-shaped. But I think a big part of that is not charging your worth. Like, you're doing an excellent job, you're amazing at what you do, you're skilled at what you do, someone has sought you out because of this, and then you're underpricing yourself because you think there's no way someone can give me that much money. That doesn't make sense. They've come to you because they know that you are good for the job. So charge accordingly. You deserve to be compensated for your effort and for your time. Another way that imposter syndrome can impact you financially is you not putting yourself out there. We touched on this earlier on in the episode, but when you feel like an imposter, feel like a fraud, you don't show up 100% in your business and you don't show up 100% for yourself, and that limits your earning potential. So whereas Joe Blogs, who has the confidence of, I don't know, the highest level of confidence, Joe Blogs will get into the room and he will work that room. He will talk to every single person and find the person that is the connect to get him to the next level of his business. Whereas if you're that person that has imposter syndrome, you're just going to be in that room and be happy to be in a room, and that's it. That's as far as it's gone. I've made it here. That's it. Look at me. I'm lucky to be here. And oh my gosh, let me not speak in case they realize that I'm in this room and they need to quickly escort me off the premises. And then you don't talk to anybody. You don't do the networking. You don't make that connection that could take your business potentially to the next level. And that's a big difference between the person that suffers from imposter syndrome and the person that's going to make it big financially in their business or whatever it is that they pursue. So if you're listening to this podcast and imposter syndrome is something you can identify with, it's definitely something you can work through. It's something that's going to take a lot of self-reflection and self-talk and self-affirmation, but it's something you can start to overcome slowly. I don't think it's something you can just totally arrive at. Yep, that's it. I'm free. I'm never going to feel like an imposter again. It's something you're continuously going to have to work through. But I think being aware of it and aware of the triggers and aware of how you respond in these scenarios can help you on your journey to overcoming it slowly. Things like journaling, tracking how you're feeling on a daily basis. When you feel like an imposter, at what times does it show up? How does it show up? And how do you respond? How would you like to respond? Just bringing all of that thing to your awareness and consciousness will help you to make different decisions next time. Seeking out support as well, getting a coach, getting a mentor, speaking to friends, speaking to family, or even speaking to professionals when it comes to the topic of feeling like an imposter and feeling like a fraud. Speak out, don't suffer in silence. Set yourself realistic goals, realistic expectations. Like, just be realistic with what it is you're going to achieve with the time that you have allocated. So for example, 2024, we've got 5 months left of the year. What do you want the next 5 months to look like, and how are you going to show up for yourself in order to achieve those things? Breaking it down into monthly goals and even weekly goals, and then monitoring your progress is going to help you on that journey to overcoming imposter syndrome, because every time you're able to successfully tick something off that list, you're going to feel a bit more encouraged, a bit more accomplished, and you're going to feel a lot better about yourself. And just be mindful of the things that cause you stress, the things that are your triggers, the things that are your vices, and try and avoid those and limit them as much as you can. Are you around certain friends that we call frenemies, that when you're around them, they make you feel more inferior, they make you feel less than? Then maybe it's time to reevaluate your friendship groups and your friendship circles, so that you're not surrounding yourself with people that bring you down or make you feel inferior. You're surrounding yourself with people that are going to build you up and make you feel better about yourself. And I think the final thing that I'll suggest is just to become an expert. The more you learn, the more you earn, which is great. But also, the more you learn, the more confident you become. The more confident and competent you become in a certain subject area, the less you feel like an imposter, because the more you understand what it is you're doing, the more confident you are at what you're delivering, the less that you're going to feel like a fraud and like you don't belong there. Anyway, I've covered a lot in today's episode. I think this is probably the longest episode that I've done so far on the podcast. And it just goes to show how passionate I am about this subject, because I know if it's something I've struggled with and it's something I'm learning to overcome, I'm sure there's somebody listening that can relate to it, and hopefully some of the things covered in this episode can help you on your journey to overcoming this imposter syndrome. Let me know if you have any questions about today's episode. Leave them in the comment section below. If I get enough questions and enough comments, I will do a part 2, because I haven't even covered everything that I have in my notes, but I'm conscious that this episode has become a lot longer than the other episodes, and I do want to stick to some kind of consistency in terms of the length of time of each episode, so that you kind of know what to expect. So I'll leave it there for now, and I definitely will do a part 2 on this episode. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. In the show notes, it'll be great to hear your feedback. I need to get some reviews on Spotify, guys, so please do help me out by leaving a review of the podcast if you've enjoyed it and if you found it useful. Also, please do share this podcast with a friend or family member who you think will benefit from the subjects covered on the show. And that is it for today's episode. I'll speak to you at the same time next week.